Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Next to Madison. On today's episode, next to me is a amazing woman. She is an author of some very successful books. She is also a professional public speaker and is also the founder of a website called winthisfight.org. And it is a website to help fight and combat human trafficking, which is such a huge issue going on right now. So with that being said, I want to bring on my amazing guest, Mitzi Perdue. How are you?
What a joy to be here. And
I'm
to be with
so excited. I grew up eating Perdue Chicken.
You're a good woman.
So I guess we have to talk about that now. So you're Perdue because you married into...
I married Frank Perdue.
Yes. And he was the son of the founder or the grandson of the founder?
He was the person who made Perdue Chicken famous. He was the one that you would have seen in the ads in the 1970s, 80s, 90s.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and he was known for decades as the world's premier marketer.
Yeah.
Because he did something that nobody had ever done before. He created a branded commodity. People used to say that if you advertise a commodity, it's just pouring money down the drain.
Right.
And he thought that can't be true. And so he began advertising Perdue Chicken.
Wow. So this was in his family.
His father had started it, but when he joined his father, it was a father and son operation.
Wow.
There were no employees when Frank first started. By the time of his passing, he employed 20,000 people.
And it's still such a strong brand today.
Well, we're in the middle of our 100th anniversary, and I'm so proud of that I could burst.
I know, it is, because you just think of chicken, you think of Perdue Chicken.
I
can't really think of like a lot of other brands of chicken.
Well, don't. It's a very bad idea to think of the other brands.
This is true. Perdue Chicken it is. They do not endorse us, but we are endorsing them, right?
Yay.
So, but I want to go back a little bit because you wrote a book. I think it was one of your first books because you actually were born into a very wealthy family, the family that started the Sheraton Hotels. So what year did the Sheraton chain start?
It started in the early 1930s.
Okay. So that was obviously after the Gilded Age. And so was it started by your grandparents?
No, my father.
Your father?
My father and my uncle.
Isn't that amazing? So you grew up like in a very successful family.
I did, and it was really clear to me that it was a successful family because we had a big house and that had a ballroom.
That's a sign, yes.
Yeah, as Sherlock Holmes would say, that's a clue.
That is a clue. They always say in New York City, you're rich if you have a dining room table. You're super rich if you have a ballroom.
Well, at his death, he had 400 hotels. And, an amazing coincidence, this is true. I mean, if I were writing a novel, I wouldn't dare say this because it would be unbelievable. But my father started with no employees. At the time of his death, he employed 20,000 people. And it's the same story as Frank Perdue had.
It's great. They both were at 20,000 at the time of their death.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But the other thing is, they had so many ideas on management and growth that were just identical. And it was just, it's kind of amazing to me that I would be with two people who had ideas that were so similar. And if I may, let me give you one of them.
Okay.
If you had asked my father, what was the secret of your success? He would have answered you, and I know this is his answer because he wrote it in one of his books. His success was because of the people who worked for him at every level.
Yes.
Now, if you had asked Frank Perdue exactly the same thing, he would have given the same answer. And so both men put extraordinary amounts of effort into valuing and encouraging and just bringing forward the people who worked with them.
Isn't that amazing? So did your father come from like a wealthy family before he started Sheraton, or was he self-made?
He was utterly self-made. My grandfather was a historian.
So
they don't make rich, well, maybe today they do, but back then they don't make rich historians.
I still don't think they do. But the thing is, what do you think that his mindset was to become so wealthy and successful? Because they say a lot of wealth is all in our mindset. If you took a billionaire and you took all his money away, it wouldn't be very long before he had it back or she had it back.
Well, I remember being really impressed by my father on that subject of mindset.
Uh-huh.
I remember I could have been like 8 years old, and we had a country house, and I watched him chopping wood. And I was really surprised because I was aware that he was a big famous people and people, fussed over him and that he was a famous person. And here while he was chopping wood, and if you've chopped a lot of wood, there's a rhythm to it where you swing the axe and it goes in and then you swing again. And he obviously had done it lots and lots. And, even at 8 years old, I could tell that this man knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
So I asked him, what are you doing chopping wood? You could pay somebody to do that. And he said, first of all, he enjoyed it. And second, he felt that if he lost every penny that he had, that it wouldn't rearrange his mental furniture because he felt that he could start over again and he wasn't afraid of hard work. Is that not cool?
Mind blown. Oh my gosh.
I loved it.
I just got the chills.
Oh, thank you.
Because it's so true. If it's, it is in that mindset. So when he did, are you an only child or do you
No, there are 5 of us.
There's 5 of you. So how did he keep you guys grounded?
One of the things that he did, which I just cherish, to me it's worth more than inheriting a diamond tiara, which, trust me, I've not inherited a diamond tiara. But you give me a choice of a great big historic diamond tiara and what I'm about to describe. I'd take what I'm about to describe.
Okay.
Okay, so we came from a family of wealth. He wanted to make sure that all his children at least had a few years of public school. And I treasure that because I think, I went to a combination of public schools and private schools. And I have a suspicion that a lot of the people who only went to private schools had lived unnecessarily in a bubble because when I was going to public school, I had the huge privilege that I'm grateful to for the rest of my life of one of my closest friends, Dickie Hallett, his father was a policeman.
Yeah.
Or one of my closest girlfriends, and this is like 7th grade, 8th grade, one of my closest girlfriends, Peggy Flynn, her parents were dairymen. And I just loved it because under what other circumstance, if I were going exclusively to...
Right.
I just value that.
What made you realize that, there's all different walks of life and, that you had...
Well, how about, I'll give you an example of where it pays off for me even today. I'm a huge admirer of law enforcement.
Yes.
In fact, something that I'm really proud of right now, there's a magazine called Police One.
Okay.
And I'd written an article about things that I had seen with a close friend of mine who is in law enforcement. And they published it. And I'm thinking, if I weren't an admirer of law enforcement and had friends who were in law enforcement, I wouldn't be published in a global magazine called Police One. Yay.
Yes, I know. Because that is a hard job. You don't get paid that much, and you're putting. I go to work, and I'm not going to die when I get home.
Exactly. They're there to protect and serve, and they put their lives on the line for us.
And they deserve more credit. They really do.
All the credit in the world. Yeah. I love them.
Yeah. Well,
but
God,
I wonder if it would have been as easy for me to make friends with some of my friends in law enforcement if one of my best friends as a child hadn't had a father who was a policeman.
That could have been it. Yeah, and if you were just surrounded and you didn't know anything else, like you didn't see like the difference and the. But I think that's great what he did. And did any of your brothers or sisters go off the deep end because of the wealth?
No, I thought. Well, here's another thing that my father used to say to any of us. When we wanted something, he would say in a very low, stern voice, "Earn it." And so, if I wanted, whatever I wanted, it was generally earn it.
Well, because he did it.
Yeah, and we had allowances. We did chores. So I can't swear how grounded I am or aren't, but I think I'm more grounded than I might have been if my parents. They were very concerned about having spoiled children, and so I'm a hotel heiress. Father had 400 hotels, but growing up, my clothes were hand-me-downs.
Okay, so you had a very normal upbringing, which is probably why you're so humble and
close to normal.
Well, so what do you think of Paris Hilton?
I would love to meet her.
Okay.
If you can arrange that.
Well, I mean, maybe. Lynette, you're on it.
No, but I'm absolutely fascinated by her because she had such a different background from mine.
Yes.
I mean, we were supposed. Mother's ambition for us was to be good citizens, and she wanted us, something that she would tell us all the time as we were growing up: put back in the bucket. And what she meant, I don't know if that's immediately clear, but her feeling was, what we were given, we had to give back. And so it was very much about giving back. And, well, as I said, she wanted us to be good citizens.
Well, right. Absolutely. Got to give to those that are less fortunate, and you'll still have plenty.
And then my father, he had such almost, I'm wondering, searching for the word, whether it's idealistic, but let me share with you something of my father's approach to life.
Oh, okay.
And it has to do with when he'd take over a new hotel. And we're talking the 1930s, and pretty much during the height of the Great Depression, because Sheraton Hotels began during the Great Depression, because nobody could make money on a hotel when nobody had any money to stay at a hotel.
Right.
And so he could buy hotels, that were teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. And when he'd buy a hotel, the first thing that he would do when he took possession that day, he would invite all the people who worked at the hotel. And, there might be 700 or 800 of them. And he'd invite them all into the ballroom of the hotel.
Wow.
And he'd know ahead of time that he was dealing with some really demoralized people, because at the height of the Great Depression, it's hard for us to believe today, but there was 25% unemployment. And if you lost your job, you're almost certainly not going to find another, and it meant the breadline. Well, so he knew that when a hotel's teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, everybody's worried about their jobs. Right. And not only that, when somebody is taken over, when there's new ownership, they probably have their cousins and uncles who are going to take the jobs of the people who already have the jobs.
Yes.
So Father would mount the stage, look out over his audience, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Every one of you keeps your job." And then he explained why. He said, "I believe in you. I know that you know this hotel better than anybody else in the world. You know your job better than anybody else. I know that my job is to give you the resources and the encouragement and the support to show the world just how good you are. Because here's what's going to happen. What's going to happen is, in a few months, this is going to be the most popular hotel in the city. It's going to be the most successful. It's going to be the most financially secure. And the reason is you. Because I believe in you. And as I said, my job is to allow you to show the rest of the world how good you are."
Oh, your father is like a saint.
Well, but,
oh my gosh.
But how about it paid off? Because among the things he was famous for is, if you started working with him, you probably worked for him for life, because he valued you.
Oh.
And let me tell you what would happen next. And for the moment, I want you and our listeners to imagine that you're in that audience. And you've heard this really idealistic talk. And, at the moment, you're kind of top of the world because you're not worried about going home to your spouse and thinking, how am I going to put food on the table? How am I going to pay the rent? Right. Your job is secure, and your boss believes in you. But that's just the beginning. Because so far it's just been talk.
Right.
Here's what you see. You come back to work the next day, and you don't have this horrible feeling of dread, but, it's still, the hotel's been teetering on bankruptcy. And you watch, there's a whole cavalcade of plumbers and electricians and decorators, and they're coming into the hotel. And you understand that because if a hotel has been in bankruptcy, it needs refurbishing. The carpets are stained, the curtains are frayed. But then you notice in amazement that all these people who are refurbishing the hotel, they're not going to the areas that the public sees. No, They're going to the employee dining room, the employee showers, the employee lockers, even the rickety old elevators. And the first money that Father ever spent on a hotel was in the areas that only the employees would see.
To keep them happy.
Yeah, so I asked him, why did you do that? And here was his answer, and I memorized it.
Uh-huh.
He said, you want the people who work for you, or actually he would have put it, you want the people who work with you.
Uh-huh.
You want them to feel valued, but you also want them to kind of work together as a team. And so how do you go about that? And he said, persuasion comes in 3 flavors. He said, I could have stood up in front of them that first day and said, shape up or you're fired. But he didn't.
Right.
Because he said, you can get compliance, you can get people to do what you want, but it's going to be grudging. They're going to do it, to the minimal to get by. He said,
okay, that makes sense, yeah.
Okay, so he was against intimidation, which is, shape up or you're fired.
Right.
The next approach is, as he called it, bribery. Bribery is, hey, do a great job and there's a raise in it for you. There's a bonus. But he said the problem with that is it's utterly transactional. The problem with that is they're going to work for the reward rather than the good of the whole hotel. They're, it's like a bargain.
Makes sense, yeah, right.
So what do you do? And he said the approach that he favored was, and I love this, I invite you to memorize it. Here goes.
Okay.
Inspire, don't require. And so what he wanted everybody who was working with him was to think, I'm not a maid making beds. I'm not a bartender, serving drinks. I'm not a bellman carrying baggage. No, what I'm really here for is to make this the best hotel in the city, the best served, the most popular, the most successful. And so...
Unbelievable.
Yeah, he said, if you know the why, you'll figure out the how.
Yes, that's
and
true.
the why is we're making this the best hotel in the city. And he said, when people have a vision he said the essence of leadership is to give people a better vision of themselves.
Did he ever write a book?
Yeah, he did.
What's the name of his book called?
It's called The World of Mr. Sheraton.
Wow. What year did that come out?
Came out in 1959, and it's not in print any longer, but he did tell some of the kind of philosophy that I'm describing.
Oh it's amazing. So where was the very first hotel? Was it in New York?
It was, no, because actually the Sheraton headquarters, where it started, was in Boston. And
I did not know that.
And I believe the first one might have been in Cambridge. But a story that I kind of like to tell, if you'll allow me, because I think you'll enjoy it.
Oh, my gosh. This is your platform.
Woohoo. Hey, have I landed in heaven or what?
Well, I hope it's a lot better than this, but it's pretty good.
I'll take it. But the story I wanted to share with you, if you ever see a Sheraton hotel, and by the way, we did sell the whole chain when he died, so I don't have a personal stake in it, but nevertheless... how the name Sheraton got his name, because Father's name was Henderson.
Oh.
And the third hotel he ever bought was in Springfield, Massachusetts. And we're talking the early 1930s, and neon signs had just come into, I wouldn't say popularity, but into use. And they were terribly expensive and very modern and amazing. And the hotel in Springfield had a $10,000 neon sign that said Sheraton. Well, for advertising purposes, Father really wanted to have one name for all the hotels. I mean, it's a lot easier to have an ad say stay at Sheraton rather than, and then name off a whole lot of hotels.
Right.
So, as a good New England Yankee, he couldn't bear to tear down a $10,000 sign.
Right.
And that was, in today's dollars, that might be a $200,000 sign.
Right. Yeah. $10,000 is still a lot of money, but yeah, back then, oh my gosh.
Well, he did name it Sheraton, and there were 2 reasons to do that, both of which I admire. One is he was frugal.
Uh-huh.
And by the way, we were so brought up to be frugal. But back to Sheraton
Okay.
and the name. The other reason was he felt that Henderson wasn't euphonious. It didn't sound beautiful. And he thought Sheraton sort of had a much nicer ring to it. And I just loved that he didn't have such a big ego that he had to put his name on them, that he would recognize that a nicer sounding name was the way to go.
Yes, wow. So he started, it was the third hotel he called the Sheraton because the neon sign?
Well, it already had a neon sign when he bought it that said Sheraton.
So he decided that was it.
So let's use it for all the hotels.
That is amazing. And then it just kept growing and growing and...
Well, because I think his secret sauce was the persuasion of getting people to have a better vision of themselves.
And repeat that again, that he said, inspire, don't require.
Exactly.
I love that. And I think every, business entrepreneur, business person, I think, or anyone in a leadership, it's so true.
And I feel that, there was a lot of wisdom that back then that, I've had people tell me that it seems to me just kind of normal and commonplace what I'm describing because I grew up with it. But I've had people, tell me that his brilliance in figuring out this was like rocket science almost.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is that I'm thinking is how did he get the money to buy the first hotel in the Depression?
Oh, I'll give you the answer to that. He and my uncle and then his roommate from college, they pooled the money that they had gotten from war bonuses when they served in World War I. And when they put it all together, they had $1,000.
Oh, my gosh.
And they used that to make some smaller investments. But he never really made it big until he was in his mid-30s. I mean, he was sort of bumbling along.
And what year was that?
He was, I think we're talking early 1930s when his first real success came his way.
Oh, my gosh. And so where was home that you grew up? In Boston?
Boston.
Okay. Where in Boston?
Lewisburg Square.
Where's that?
It's on Beacon Hill and...
Okay. Does the house still exist today?
Yeah, it does.
Oh.
And I don't know who lives there, but I hope they're happy because I had a happy childhood.
Does it still have a ballroom?
Actually, oh my gosh, that was one of our other houses.
Oh, the other house. Oh, okay. Wrong house.
Well, for where I grew up and went to school was Boston, and
okay.
It was a house, but that one didn't have a ballroom.
Where was the house with the ballroom?
Dublin, New Hampshire, and it's still there, and we still own it.
Oh, nice. What year was that built?
1900.
Oh, my gosh. So was that part of the Gilded Age, right, in the 1800s when it was built?
It was built, I'm not sure. I think of the Gilded Age as maybe the 1880s, 1890s.
Yeah.
This might have been the tail end of it because I guess it must have been fairly gilded if there's a ballroom that holds 200.
I know. Because who was the original builder of it? It was somebody that you bought it from somebody?
Here's a story. Around 1900, Washington, D.C. did not have air conditioning. So Washington, D.C. was known as a hardship post because, really hot, sweltering summers, no air conditioning. Mm-hmm. So the whole government would move to what they called the Hill Country. And the Hill Country was Dublin, New Hampshire, on the ridge of Mount Monadnock. And it was, cool and breezy and nice. And the Secretary of the Treasury, Franklin McVeigh, built this house, and a couple of presidents used to have it as their summer White House.
Oh, my gosh. So it must just be beautiful.
It's crazy beautiful.
How often do you get up there?
My sister lives there full time. I'm there probably, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks a year.
That's it?
Well, I'd love to be there full time.
Right.
But
yeah, you're busy. That's true. That's true. I forgot. It's not that close, right? So so let's fast forward after that. Then you meet your husband.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you guys, who was Frank Perdue? Chicken. He's not a chicken. He's just the chicken family. How did you guys meet?
We met in Washington, D.C., and the year was 1988. And I was living in California, growing rice. I mean, you can tell by my voice and my attitude that I'm a rice farmer, right?
How did you get into rice farming?
Well, doesn't every Boston debutante want to be a rice farmer?
No.
No? Oh.
But I like what...
Okay, I'll tell you briefly how that happened. My father died when I was fairly young. I was 26. And it was unexpected. He had a heart attack, and, well, it was unexpected.
Yeah.
But suddenly I came into a great, big, huge fortune
Yeah.
at 26.
Oh, my gosh.
But since we had been brought up with the idea that you're frugal and that you don't spend, it's okay to spend your income, but you don't spend the principal.
Yes.
And that, I mean, to this day, I go coach class. I came here by bus because we were brought up to be frugal and not to live in a bubble.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Okay, so here I have this great big huge fortune.
Yeah.
And I thought, I could just put it in the stock market. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the huge fortune came because we sold 400 hotels.
Wow.
Because we sold them at my father's death.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be much more interesting and much more responsible to invest it in land, in farmland. I was living in California at the time. And I spent 4 years taking agricultural courses at the University of California at Davis. It was... You're sitting next to somebody who knows more than you'd expect about agronomy, rural appraisal, agricultural accounting.
You're like such I'm just like sitting here with my mouth open because I'm like, you're so inspiring and like so, like just amazing. You're like, and then I was a rice farmer. I was like, what?
All right. Well, so I spent 4 years studying everything that I could. I mean, I also ended up knowing more about finance than I ever expected.
Right.
Because these things I bought, well, where do I start in all of this?
Yeah.
You asked me how I met Frank.
Yes.
I was growing rice, and I had been growing rice for about maybe, I guess probably 12 years.
Okay.
Well, I met him at a party that I'd been invited to in Washington, D.C. And in 1988, his advertisements didn't reach California, so I didn't know who he was.
Oh.
And at this party, there was another wrinkle to it, which is I had to leave early, and he arrived late, and we only overlapped by 10 minutes. But we decided that rice and chicken would go well together and decided to marry.
They go great together.
Well, so we decided to
Wow.
marry.
So that was fate right
Yeah.
there. Oh, my God. So do you still have the land now?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, I still own land in California, but we've transitioned from rice into wine grapes. But
Wow.
when Frank and I married, it really was a kind of speedy relationship because I told you we overlapped by 10 minutes.
Uh-huh.
But the first 5 minutes of it were spent talking about how we'd both been divorced, how we would never, ever consider the possibility of the notion of remarriage. And that was the first 5 minutes. And then the second 5 minutes, we started talking about how it was really unfortunate that we'd never remarry because that meant growing old alone. But that was our fate because neither of us would ever trust anybody again. And then he looked down at me and he said, I believe I could trust you. And I looked up
Wow.
at him and said, I believe I could trust you. And then we spent the next 4 minutes talking about what our marriage would be like. And what our marriage would be like would be, it would be supportive and not competitive and would be there for each other for the good times and the bad times. And that's just how it was. And when we married,
Oh, my gosh.
we had a long distance relationship, but when we actually married, said our I do's, I'd known him 6 weeks and 3 days.
Oh, my gosh. Was there a prenup involved on both sides?
Yep. But that was just easy. The prenup was the simplest thing in the world. I won't touch yours, he won't touch mine.
Money, not privates. No, I'm just kidding.
Naughty, naughty, naughty. We
Sorry.
love it. Don't be sorry. I yield to nobody for naughtiness.
You set me up. I had to just
Woohoo.
throw it in there. That's amazing. So, does he have like heirs that run the
Yes.
chicken company? It's still
Yeah.
a family-run business?
We have our 100th anniversary this year.
Okay.
And his son runs it. And something that I'm really, really proud of, I had 2 sons have 2 sons from a previous marriage.
I was going to say, oh. So, okay, they're still alive. Good.
Oh, yes. And the families blended so well that my son was appointed by his stepbrother after Frank's death to be vice president.
Oh, isn't that awesome?
Yeah, and because to me it's somewhat unexpected that stepbrothers would get along so well that they'd work together all day long.
I know. So he had one son and you have two?
Exactly.
Okay, so it was 3 boys.
My other son, he's an inventor, and he's living in Texas and deep into artificial intelligence.
Wow. I don't even know what that... I know what that means, but like...
Brainy.
Yeah, right. Is he working on some of the robots and...
Well, he's done something that is a little unusual. To get a patent, he owns 3 patents, but his 4th patent wasn't made by a human being. It was made by one of his artificial brains.
Oh my God. So he's obviously like genius level. I mean, that's insane.
Okay, Proud Mummy thinks so, but
Yeah.
probably not true.
Well, I can tell you that I can't build a robot. I know that right now. I would say I'm smart, but nope, couldn't do it. That's
Well,
where
guess
my
what?
blonde comes in.
Well, not a chance that I could do what he's doing.
That's amazing. And so where's Perdue based?
Salisbury, Maryland.
Okay, so that's where the headquarters are?
And that's where I live, yes.
That's where you live? Oh, gotcha. Okay, so why did I think you were in New York City for some reason?
Oh, because I love spending time in New York. Love it, love it, love it, love it. And then on top of that, I love it some more.
Yes, so you just get to come up here and enjoy?
Yeah, and get my fix of the energy and the fun here.
Well, you've got so much. I just love your energy. You've got amazing energy. So, but I want to talk about your book, the family book. The book is... You tell us the name of the book. It's with the family money and...
Okay, I have one on a biography of Frank Perdue.
Okay.
And that's business and life lessons from him, because he was a genius on a scale that's just hard to fathom.
Yeah.
I mean, he had such insight. But I also wrote a book. It's called How to Make Your Family Business Last. And
Yes.
my expertise for that is, I mentioned my father and the Hendersons. And although grandfather was a historian, so father started out basically kind of penniless, the family business actually began in 1840. And it's never not been run by a Henderson. To this day, it is run by a Henderson. And let's see if I can do math in my head fast enough. 180 years of the Henderson Estate Company.
So what did they start in?
They started in real estate, in New York, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
But it's interesting that a family business can stay in the family and go off in all sorts of different directions, but the family stays together.
I mean, that's remarkable, because you think, like, you know, when a lot of money gets involved, it brings out some sides of people that are not good.
Oh, I've seen that so often. In fact, I wrote the book. Okay, a quick story.
Yes.
I hope I don't make any enemies with this story, but there was a group that I was part of and loved dearly called the Famous Last Names Club. And these were names, part of the vow was that we would never reveal who else was there, but they had famous last names, or we had famous last names.
So like Vanderbilt, Rockefeller.
I'm not going to tell.
Okay, no problem. Just making an educated guess.
And I'm not going to comment, even though I'm dying to.
It's okay. Okay, so let's get the juice without the name.
All right. Okay, so every 6 weeks or so would meet and would talk about what it's like to have a famous last name. And most of us all really enjoyed it. But one week, the topic was, how well do you get along with your siblings? And we went around the table, and of 16 people, how about that I was the only one who really, really enjoyed my siblings? I'd hear stories about how, like one woman, her 2 brothers were squeezing her out of the company by just not telling her when the meetings were. And another where, let's see, I guess there had been divorces and mixed families and they all hated each other. And another one confessed to the group that the pain that she gets from what her siblings caused her permeated every hour of every day. And I'm thinking, OMG, that's so different from me, because in both the families that I'm part of, the greatest happiness I have is how much I love my siblings or my relatives.
Right.
And so, it was a little awkward when it came around to me, because everybody had been telling how awful it was. And I didn't want to say, hey, everybody, I'm different. So I just sort of went mumble, mumble, mumble and didn't say much.
Okay.
But it did leave me, as I was walking away from that lunch, I'm thinking, what did my family do right where we enjoy each other? And so I wrote the book based on watching two families that, we're far from perfect, but I know of families that where there've been murders. I know of a family where, and I know this family quite well, where one of the brothers got really mad at another brother, and hard to believe, but he knew where all the illegal things were, and called in the law and got his brother jailed.
Oh my gosh!
And so, while my two families, we are not perfect, but nobody sent anybody to jail or murdered anybody.
Right. That's a good step.
Yeah. So, comparatively, I think we're doing really well.
Yes.
So, how do you instill values that help people stay together?
Yes.
And my theory on all families, wealthy or not families, every family that exists has a culture. And by culture, I mean the way we do things. What you think is right, what you think is wrong, you have a culture. But is it a culture where somebody put a lot of thought into it, or did it just come about? And the conclusion I get from years of studying this is that the families that put a lot of thought into the culture they develop are much more likely to last. And as an example,
Wow.
with the Hendersons, we have dozens of values that we really live by. But let's start with that relationships are more important than money. Mm-hmm. Or another one, a really big one, and I think the Perdues do the same thing, but we call it by different names. In the Henderson family, for family quarrels, we're really big on the idea that if you've got a beef, get it out, tell it. If you have to yell and scream about it, don't sweep anything under the carpet.
100%.
But there's another side to that, which is you're allowed to yell and scream or curse or whatever you do if you're not being heard. But the one rule is we don't wash our dirty linen in public. We can argue among ourselves, but to the world, a united front.
Right.
And that was really put to the test when my father died. And, again, we're all in shock because nobody expected a heart attack to take him at age 70. Well, there was the argument over, do we sell the company or not? And there were 5 of us, and it's our tradition to solve things by consensus. But, part of the family was thinking, no, don't sell. That's, it would be an insult to our father. It would be, nobody's going to care about the employees as much as we do. His legacy, don't do it.
Okay.
While other members of my siblings had very reasonable reasons why it should be sold. But when you have a quarrel that involves identity, and if you're part of a family business, that's a big part of your identity.
Of course.
So identity arguments are some of the bitterest and worst that exist. Mm-hmm. And as I said, the feelings were white hot.
Oh my God, yeah.
But our tradition was that we don't take our family quarrels public. And so nobody went to a lawyer, nobody went to the press. Yet we kept our disagreements, and thank heaven, because if we had been public about it, by the time you take a quarrel public or go to lawyers, it's awfully hard to turn back.
It is. No, that's absolutely right. And it's amazing that you guys were all on the same page to respect each other and love each other that way.
Well, I was impressed by, looking back on it, that we did come to a consensus. We did decide to sell the hotels. And, it really did. It was like a year of mourning from my point of view, because everything that I thought I was, hotel heiress.
Yeah.
I'm not anymore.
Right.
So it was, so anybody who's listening who's thinking of selling their company, there's a big price to be paid in identity. But the reward for us of coming to a consensus was this year we will be celebrating our 130th annual reunion. And
oh my God.
And I don't think, if we had had a great big public quarrel, I don't know how it would be put together and we wouldn't be enjoying each other still.
So how many people go to this event or this reunion?
About 75.
How fun.
Oh, and it's so cool because
fun.
These are cousins that you've seen growing up. In my case, I'm not shy about my age. I'm 78.
You look fantastic, Mitzi. Oh my God.
Woohoo! Well, I look at my relatives, and it's just a high point of my year to see them.
Yeah.
And
how fun.
It is. But the Perdues do almost the same thing. As far as quarrels, we have the covenant, and the covenant, again, is sort of the same thing. Argue, but do it privately.
Right. So I do have to talk about this because obviously there's a lot of money involved, and there's 3 boys. How was it when they got married? Was it difficult because you were bringing a stranger into a new family dynamic? Like you didn't know who they were. You didn't know.
Wait, are we talking Frank's children? Because he had 3
Both.
daughters.
Both. Any of them. I mean, on either side. Because it's like when you get married and you come from a lot of money, like sometimes people can get in the way just because they don't know. Like obviously there's the prenup, there's this, but let's use, for example, the whole Mexit thing.
Oh.
With the royals.
Actually,
What do you think about that? Let's talk about that.
Okay, I'm really very, very opinionated, but
I know I like it because it's so hot right now, and it's that interesting thing. You had these royals that were set up and huge family, and they tried to keep stuff out of the press, and then with Meghan coming in, things got very, important. The press went after her, poor girl, but I don't know what I think of it. I can't wrap my head around it. But like you kind of came from that world a little bit.
Okay, I'm afraid of being really unpopular with what I'm about to say, but here goes.
All right, here we go.
I mean, I was brought up with the idea of duty, and that you solved things within the family, and that your ego wasn't supposed to get in the way. You're supposed to be unselfish. You're supposed to think of the greater good. That there are things more important than what you want.
Yeah, that's true.
And, I mean, who knows how any of us would have acted if we were in Meghan's situation. But I like to dream and imagine that I would have sucked it up.
Well, I mean, it seems like it would be everybody's dream to be in that situation. But
I would feel that I was betraying a whole lot of people if I let my ego separate me from something bigger than me.
Yeah, I mean, I just still can't believe it. Like, they're out. Like, it's over. And, like, they don't even live there anymore.
Well, I don't think that, I mean, again, unpopularity, old-fashioned, but here goes. I want my husband to be happy. And I'm not sure that she's taking her husband on a road that's going to make him happy. She's separating him from his family, from his career.
It's going to be very interesting to kind of watch it all unfold. But
well,
yeah,
you asked my opinion, and I gave it.
No, I mean, I think it's a great opinion, because I don't think anyone really knows. I mean, I don't know her, so I don't know. I wish I had the press that she had, not the bad press, but just the press.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just don't know. But that's what happens when there's a lot of money involved, a lot of people, and it just all their scandals became out in the open, and it's like the royal family doesn't really have any privacy anymore. Like that was over, but somebody else came in and almost disrupted
that I was brought up with.
That
since father had he was a prominent person, we were simply taught from childhood, behave in public. I mean, you just have to.
Yeah, that's true, right? Because it was his reputation too, and then it's your reputation.
Well, it went a little bit farther than that even. If let's say taking a quarrel public or misbehaving in public, we were taught that there were 20,000 employees, there were 25,000 stockholders, And if we took a quarrel public or did something that was harmful to the name, that it wasn't just about us, that there were others who were going to suffer, including, how about like the lenders, the bankers,
100%.
Or even the health of the community, because a hotel plays a big role as far as the tax base. And so we were just told, don't be selfish.
Right.
This may seem painful or wrong or you're miserable, but suck it up because it's not all about you.
Yes, that's true.
And so again, that gives me a somewhat harsh view of Macon, but
yeah, I know it's always that thing is like you just don't know what's going on, but it's kind of like you knew what you were getting into.
Or
we've
even
all
if
grown up with the royal family, and it's if you wanted a normal life, marry a normal dude.
Yeah.
Like Harry's just not a normal dude, and I mean that in a positive way.
Yeah.
Well,
I wish them happiness, and I hope it works out. But
of course, yes.
But as I said, in my imagination, and I can't know how I'd really act, but in my imagination, I think that I would have not done what she did.
Yeah. So the book is really somebody who there's all these technology companies, and now there's this new generation of wealth, right? Like Elon Musk's kids, and so would this be a good book for somebody like them to kind of read, to kind of keep like advice on how to keep the family together, and just kind of how you guys were able to do it to not create so much animosity within the family?
I'll tell you why I wrote the book.
Okay.
And it's for any family. But this is getting back to my story of the famous Last Names Club.
Uh-huh.
I have a mission in life, and that's to increase happiness and decrease misery. And I saw so much misery that I thought could be avoided when families don't get along. In fact, a question for you, I mean, it's hypothetical,
okay,
but of the pains that come your way,
uh-huh,
or the joys that come your way, don't they almost all, the really big ones, come from your intimate relationships?
Yeah.
Husband, children, father. When those are going well, heavenly.
Yes.
When those are going badly, it's like my friend said, the pain permeates every hour of every day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would love to, since I've seen examples of things that you can teach families or family members, including that relationships are more important than money.
Yes.
If you're not taught that, another thing, we were brought up not to feel jealous, and how do you teach people not to be jealous? Well,
that's amazing. It's yeah.
Well,
How do you?
I was asking my brother about that, because it seems to me that in the family of like 75 who come to the reunion,
Uh-huh.
some are doing really, really well. Some are struggling. Some are like Harvard PhDs. They're ones who have disabilities. And yet they're all welcome in the family. And I was asking my brother, how is it that we rejoice for each other, or we're there for each other, and we're not jealous of each other? And he said that our parents, they never had like favorites. They modeled for us that you rejoice when it's going well and you support when it's going badly. And that
Unbelievable.
Well, like in my family, there's I have a sister who skipped a grade. I have a brother who was held back a grade. And the other brother was telling me, our parents could have celebrated the one who skipped or the one who was held back. Oh, why can't you try harder? Never did that.
Wow.
They just accepted the kids for who they are. And, none of us was, the role modeling was that you celebrated everybody.
Yes.
And you rejoiced for the good and supported for the unfortunate parts.
Wow. So your family, your parents were absolutely amazing, and you're super blessed. And that is kind of I want to talk about your other stuff too. So I'm going to push forward, and that's really kind of led you, because you talked a lot about service and giving back. So I want to talk about your other book, which is the tips to help combat sex trafficking.
Exactly.
Because that is such a big thing that has really come to light now. And what was the book? It was 52 things to look out for.
It's 52 tips for combating human trafficking.
Okay, so how did this book come about?
It came about because on April 11th of last year, 2019, I heard a lecture that completely changed my life. I mean, my life is before April 11th of last year and after. Here's what the lecture was. It was a man who was telling what I hadn't really understood was that sex trafficking, there's a brutality to it that I hadn't imagined. He was telling about 12-year-old girls who are violated like 12 times a night with complete strangers. And that's 365 days a year. And the really awful part about this is that like only 1% of these children are rescued. So most of them, what the end for them is, their average life is 7 years. And it's suicide or overdose.
So 7 years once they're trafficked.
Once they're trafficked, their life expectancy is 7 years.
Oh my gosh!
But can you imagine, overdose, suicide, murder, or disease? And I'm thinking, this is the most monstrous thing I'd ever imagined my whole life. I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but my view of prostitution was sort of from this very unrealistic movie, Pretty Woman, where it seemed sort of glamorous. No.
Right.
Children. In fact, I was talking with a woman today she deals with kids who are 6 years old who are being trafficked or who've been trafficked. And so, as I said, I couldn't unhear this.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in the audience thinking, this is the most monstrous thing I've ever heard of in my life. The suffering is just inconceivable. Inconceivable. And there are 40 million people in the world who are victims of human trafficking. And I get this figure from the United Nations. And that, by the way, imagine every man, woman, and child in California, which has approximately the same population, that they were all in slavery. Okay, so I'm sitting in the audience listening to this guy speaking. His name's Paul Hutchinson. And I'm sitting in the audience thinking, OMG, I want to do something about this.
Right.
If there's that much suffering, I can't be the same person.
Yeah.
So, ideally, I'd love to write a great big check. But in fact, if I write a great big check for his foundation, that means cutting back on other charities that I'm already deeply involved with, like I might be on their board or, things that for years I've supported.
Right.
And if I cut back them, I know that it would be hard on them. It might mean fewer staff or something.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I'm sitting there in the audience thinking, who could I cut back? And I can't think of one that I would like to cut back on in order to do something about this thing that seems to me, becoming the most important thing in my life, doing something about that kind of suffering.
Right.
Well, I'm sitting in the audience and I'm thinking, but I own a chest. Actually, it's a desk that we believe, and I'm ready to be proved wrong on this, but I believe it was owned by a de Medici cardinal from the year 1600.
Oh my gosh.
It has the insignia on it of de Medici. People who can read heraldry tell me it belonged to a de Medici cardinal. And because it's old and because it's historic and because it came from my family, it occurred to me, actually I had an idea of what it would be worth. And I also know what the speaker, Paul Hutchinson, said it costs to rescue a little girl. And I figured this chest, if I were to put it up for auction, there's a chance it could save 100 little girls.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm thinking, I love this chest. It's got all sorts of family memories. But, if you weigh and sort of like a balance of 100 girls saved from suffering,
I know.
a chest, guess which one?
Exactly. So how much is it what is the cost to save one girl out of trafficking?
If you're going through the Child Liberation Foundation, it's $2,000.
Okay.
And by the way, that's you won't get the same figure from everyone,
right.
But that's in that case.
Okay. And so what did the 52 tips, can you go through some of those so people that are listening, if they're at an airport listening where there's a lot of stuff going on, they're getting gas in their car, what can they look out for to help prevent this that's in the book?
Okay, the book is 52 tips, but one of the things that I emphasize over and over again is you can see signs of trafficking. It doesn't mean it is trafficking. There's got to be like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 things that make you pay attention.
Okay.
And in a way, I don't want to give 1 or 2 because I don't want people to think, oh, she looks undernourished and she's wearing the wrong clothes. Or she's got a tattoo that makes you wonder.
Yes.
When you have to sort of look at the whole picture, and therefore, and I think I'd give away my book, but if you want to get it, it's on Amazon, and look up Mitzi Perdue, and Perdue is spelled like chicken, and you'll see the book. But to repeat myself, I don't want to give like even 2 or 3 tips because it's a whole picture that makes you worry.
Okay.
But the amazing thing is once you know like 20 or so things to look for, your eyes get opened and things that you wouldn't even notice normally. But I think it takes training and some study to really be effective at this.
Well, here's the other thing too is, you know, if I witness this, let's say I'm at an airport and I witness something, what do I do? Who do I call? Like, I can't go up and say, "Hey, pervert, let her go."
Yeah, and
they'd probably kill me.
Okay, and that's actually almost the first piece of advice.
Okay.
Leave it to law enforcement. Leave it to people who are trained. It is not your job to intervene.
Okay.
And here's why. You know, partly because you're worried about getting killed, but on top of that, it can put the victim in danger.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
But people who are trained know how to handle it and know what's likely to happen.
So you just call the law enforcement and just say, I see something a little suspicious.
Yeah, and actually, I'm hugely in favor. I've heard experts in this field say, when in doubt, speak up, because very often, you know, you get what I call a spidey sense. Remember Spider-Man could sort of feel things? Well, if your spidey sense, in addition to everything else, tells you that, you know, this really doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Yes, by all means. And then there's also the anti-trafficking hotline. And I haven't memorized it, but it is in my book.
Okay.
But what I'm doing, when I told you about this desk that I'm ready to put up for auction, it occurred to me that I bet there are other people who have high value things that they would put up for auction.
Right.
So I went to Sotheby's and said, if I could get you 30 or 40 items in the $1 million range or more, would you, for the sake of anti-trafficking, this one time, would you be willing to forego your normal seller's commission? And for the sake of anti-trafficking, the answer is yes. And so,
oh my God, that's awesome.
So I now have donations that you can hardly believe, but allow me to tell you like a couple of them.
Sure.
I've been working on this anti-trafficking auction, not only in the United States, but also in Europe and South America and Asia. The biggest donation so far comes from Taipei, Taiwan. There's a jeweler who inherited a 69-carat ruby that belonged to a Qing dynasty emperor.
Oh my gosh, what is that worth?
I've heard estimates of 30 million. That doesn't mean it's accurate. This is somebody who...
That's going to save a lot of kids.
Yeah, well, this man, he's elderly and he hates trafficking.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to have it. And by the way, I'm going to make a guess that you've never had a 69-carat ruby in your hand.
I don't even think I've had a 1-carat ruby in my hand, to be honest with you.
Well,
I don't think I have.
Well, it's somewhat smaller than a golf ball, but it makes you think of a golf ball.
Really? Is it just so beautiful?
It's sort of jaw-dropping. I mean, you can't...
Yeah.
And actually, a funny thing, he gave it to me. He said, I could have just walked out with it. But I was thinking, how do you get that through customs?
Well, right. So how did it get to this?
He still has it. He wrote me a great big long document in both Chinese and English and with all sorts of seals and things. And I asked Sotheby's, how do we get this thing? Because I don't want to have a $30 million thing,
no.
Even going to the taxi or staying at the hotel. And they said they absolutely know how to transport these things. I suppose they have armed guards or whatever they do.
Yeah.
But other things that have come in, one of the world's more perfect emeralds. Large emeralds, there are all sorts of huge emeralds, but they're full of flaws. This is one that was found from the sunken treasure ship Atocha in 1622, and it has almost no flaws, and it's quite large.
Wow.
And there are other just wonderful things. There's a necklace that we think belonged to Marlene Dietrich, the movie star, and it's appraised at $1 million, and it's diamonds and large sapphires. But there are all these people who want to do this wonderful thing, which is, let me tell you where the money goes, and this is the most important thing of all.
Yes.
The donor gets to say where the money goes, because I'm not going to spend the money. I don't have any kind of knowledge of how to stop trafficking.
Okay.
My only area of expertise is to help fund them. So any anti-trafficking organization or anybody who cares about anti-trafficking, if they can find an item that's ultra high value, $1 million range,
Okay.
if they'd contact me, and I'll give my address in a moment. I mean, I'll give my email address.
Wow.
If they have such an item, we can do something spectacular for them because we can convert it into cash, which then goes to the organization of their choice.
Oh, wow. So in the trafficking area, or
It's got to be trafficking, but I view trafficking prevention as being extremely important.
Absolutely.
So supposing you're providing jobs, supposing you're providing education for
or
people,
mentorship for the foster kids too, so they don't get trafficked.
all of that,
Yeah.
anything that helps make people less vulnerable, because the traffickers, what they really want is vulnerable people. And so anything that makes people less vulnerable is eligible. And I also include law enforcement in this because law enforcement is fabulous at attacking trafficking.
Right.
So if somebody had something fabulously valuable that they wanted to say goes to law enforcement, I'm all for it.
And is that the winthisfight.org?
Winthisfight.org.
So that's where they can go and they can find out more about these auctions and how to just donate if they don't have an item that can they still donate on the website?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's great. So there's no minimum, whatever they can do.
Whatever they can do. If they donate it to winthisfight.org, actually, I'd almost rather that they contacted me directly.
Okay.
Because we are revamping the website right now.
All right. So what's your email where they can reach out to you?
Okay, mine is Mitzi, Mitzi, at winthisfight.org.
Okay, perfect.
So contact me, and I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks from now, we'll be absolutely totally set up for donations.
Oh, that is amazing. I just love that you obviously grew up in a very amazing, privileged, wealthy household, but your parents really instilled amazing values, which made you such an amazing person.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
I mean, I'm so honored to have met you, and thanks to our amazing producer for putting you on the show. And this was just such a fun conversation.
Well, I've sure loved every second of it.
Yeah.
And I loved all those nice things you said. I feel as if I've got a duck and that they go over my head, but I love it. Thank you.
No, you've got great energy. Don't change.
Thank you.
You are absolutely great. And can they find your father's book at all? If they went online or?
You can find it on, it's very frequently for sale on eBay.
On eBay, okay. Because he sounded like he had amazing business advice. And then your other book you can find on Amazon or?
On Amazon, yeah.
And that one's the family, keeping wealth in the family, or how to keep the family business together.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are 6 or 7 books of mine on Amazon. So
oh my gosh.
There's a menu of. Well, I'm a writer by trade, so
I love it. I absolutely love it. So we'll go. We do have to wrap up, but I'm just so honored that you were here. You guys, please look at Mitzi Perdue. You can contact her as well if you want to join in on the fight to combat sex trafficking, which is such a big thing, and we can't fight it unless we're together. What were you saying?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I would love to have volunteers. Whatever your skill is, we will find something that you will find satisfying, and I promise you the ride of your life.
Well, you can sign me up.
Yay!
I would love to get involved to help you on some level.
I will.
So yes, we will talk for sure. So you guys, Mitzi, thank you so much for being here. And you guys at home, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Next to Madison. And we'll see you guys next time to find out who's next. Hi, your host, Madison Malloy here. I just wanted to remind you guys to please follow the show on social media at Next to Madison. And if you have any questions or suggestions for the show, or you feel that you would be a great guest on the show and would love to be considered, please feel free to email me at nexttomadison@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms. And I thank you again for listening.